Hi, this is Christopher Mitchell, and this is Module 8 assignment for Introduction to Sociology. Social change has affected many aspects of our environment, from style to language and even our surroundings. Social change has affected our physical environment tremendously. According to Hughes and Kroller, many environmental changes have occurred in the last decade through glaciers melting, expansion of desert land, rising population, and excessive use of resources, resulting in the response and action of the human population. Leading into another factor that has been affected by social change is population. The population of our world has been and still continues to be growing at a tremendous rate. The increase in population in many civilized nations affects social culture and dynamics and increases the demand for resources that are dwindling and doing damage to the planet. Social change has also affected innovation in many different ways. In addition to discovery and invention that adapt to the social and environmental needs and demands of society, cultural standards and expectations play a functional role in the flow of innovation. For example, the discovery of steel allowed for the discovery of skyscrapers, mechanical tools, and machinery, all of which were a demand of the society or culture in which there was a use for steel. Social change has also affected diffusion over the last decade. Diffusion is the process in which information or cultural traits are spread throughout a population. For example, cotton was first discovered in India, but it was then diffused around the country as people in various cultures around the world had different functional uses for it. Italian styles of cooking and preparing food is something that we all now enjoy, but it was brought to the United States at one point through the process of diffusion. In modern society, we see many Italian restaurants and dishes in most civilized societies in the United States, and we consider it as a part of our culture. Very seldomly do we give credit to the people who brought these Italian style of cooking to our country. Lastly, social change has affected the mass media by increasing access to information, propaganda, and advertising, which also leads to increased diffusion. The local news outlets, newspapers, and advertisement firms everywhere we look can affect the way we socialize, opinionate, and perceive products, events, and people all over the world. The information revolution was, and still is, an important perspective in social change. In my opinion, I believe the information revolution has changed society in many ways and in many time periods that we never thought were perceivable. Cell phones and computers are now endless sources of information that are at the convenience of our fingertips. Television, newspapers give us access to knowing what is going on in our country, state, county, and the world around us. The information revolution over the last few decades has changed society by causing more people to be more knowledgeable, self-taught, and aware of our surroundings, more so than any other time in history. We can now have access to goods and services without even leaving our home. College degrees are now obtainable through our living rooms with just access to a computer. Society has changed tremendously through the modern access of information, and in the case which can be endlessly accessed. In the future, we will see people with more knowledge than ever before at staggeringly young ages. We will be able to have any good product or service provided at home, eliminating the hassle of leaving the house. The need for grocery stores, retail stores, and college campuses may become significantly low because of the access to all of these services and information through the convenience of our computers, cell phones, and devices. Modernization has changed many underdeveloped nations through opening the door for access to new information, industrialized manufacturing strategies, globalized medicine, occupations/jobs, and increased opportunities to make money. Many underdeveloped nations have been able to grow into more functioning industrial developed nations because of the availability of modern technology that can be used by citizens of underdeveloped nations to work, access medicine, and learn new efficient ways to develop a nation, following the standards of other industrialized nations, for example, the United States. Informational outlets such as the news can be easily accessed on television, internet, and through newspapers, which can help underdeveloped nations learn and discover how they can develop their nation into a more industrialized and economical society. Many social movements have occurred throughout the history of mankind. Ideology and the desire to bring about change are what drives social movements. The first type of social movement that has occurred in history are revolutionary movements. These movements advocate for change in the rules or laws of the existing scheme. According to Hughes and Kroller, revolutionary movements occurred in the 1960s when African American nationalist groups pursued dramatic change to the Republican form of government. The second form of social movements that have occurred are reform movements. A great example of a reform movement that is mentioned by Hughes and Kroller in Sociology the Core was in the United States in the 1960s when Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. continuously advocated for civil rights, freedom, and equal treatment for all people, particularly African Americans. Another example of social movements in history includes resistance movements. Resistance movements oppose change to currently implemented rules, laws, regulations, and social factors/values that make up the particular society. Mentioned by Hughes and Kroller, an example of a resistance movement was the opposition to the advocacy of civil rights to African American citizens, which happened in the 1950s. The such resistance movement mentioned caused organizations such as white citizen councils and the Ku Klux Klan to be formed. The final type of social movement in history is expressive movements. These social movements are less focused on bringing about change, but rather focused on revolutionizing people through expression in religion or future promises. According to Hughes and Kroller, Zen Buddhism was popular in the United States in the 1970s and the 1980s, and is a great example of an expressive movement, as they are not concerned with advocating for societal change, but focus on changing people from within and giving them a new perspective on life in a world where many people are oppressed. My sources can be cited in Sociology the Core by Hughes and Kroller. Thank you so much.